Okay, hello everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar on Deep Innovation Design. We're just going to be waiting a few minutes to let everybody join us from the waiting room. So thank you for your patience as we wait for just a couple minutes to let everybody pop into the meeting so we can get started very shortly. Okay, so good morning or afternoon, depending on where in the world you are right now. We'd like to welcome you all again to this presentation on Deep Innovation Design. My name is Cleo Dan, and I'm on the product team here at BlueCallom. So the content of the webinar will get started very shortly, but first I'd just like to run through some quick housekeeping items. So there's no need to take any screenshots since we will be recording this webinar and making it available to you in the next couple of days. And secondly, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please post them in the Zoom Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your screen, and we will address them at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panelist, Axel Schulze. He is founder and CEO of BlueCallom Group and chairman of the World Innovations Forum Foundation. Axel started and successfully exited 4 companies, the biggest reaching 5 billion in revenue, the second close to 1 billion. Axel is a published author and patent holder. In 2015, listed in the global 100 most influential startup accelerators. In 2008, he won the San Francisco Entrepreneur Award. In 2006, he chaired the SaaS Channel Committee at SIIA, the leading trade association for the software industry in the US. He was also an early advisor at LinkedIn in 2003 and spending the majority of his business life in Silicon Valley. Most recently, Axel has been on a quest to discover how the brain creates and processes ideas and how some of these ideas can disrupt an entire industry. So without further ado, Axel, I will hand it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Cleo, and yeah, welcome also from my side. This is the 6th version of our knowledge transfer series. So it's no advertising, it's actually just getting experience and knowledge across. And as you can see, we have actually an amazing team. The list gets bigger. Those who started with us, you probably saw 3 people. I'm very happy that we have Shafir Toussaint. He's actually the COO of SAP, the data division, and he's also one of the guys who actually started the design thinking initiative within SAP, which led to the D school, the design school. So somebody who is deeply involved in innovation and ideation. Matis is a professor here for actually innovation and entrepreneurship, and so is Douglas. Both are here from the University in Lucerne, and George, our man in the US, sort of still our anchor in Silicon Valley. So what we do today is go deeper into what is actually this deep innovation design thing? What are we doing in general? And so I was asked in the previous webinars, why don't you spend at least 60 seconds to explain what the company does? And so I'll try in 60 seconds. So innovation ideation management system, actually as a platform, this is what we're doing. BlueCallom is with its Neuro Ideation method that we developed, unleashing kind of the groundbreaking innovation spirit and possibilities. It's an enterprise-grade cloud-based technology. It's actually the same architecture that we used in my previous company back in time in Silicon Valley. So we managed about 2 million users, 100 million transactions a year. I think it actually grew to 400 in the last year. And so we cheated a little bit when we built BlueCallom because we had these amazing technology developed. We had companies, I mean, from Cisco to Symantec and to Avaya, and I mean, all the big tech companies were basically using our platform back then. And we augmented what we built with corporate innovation training. So we're kind of selling training classes, helping our users and customers to get their arms around both the methodology primarily and a little bit about the product, but the product is designed to be very intuitive. So, but the methodology is still something we need to explain. And as you can see, the kind of people we have on board are, I mean, if they're not professional trainers, I guess nobody is. And that is the mantra of any Silicon Valley company, even though we're not in Silicon Valley anymore, is get the best people you can possibly think of. And that's what we're trying to. BlueCallom Beta is available on start is November 24. It's a hard date for everybody, so we're convinced that we can make that date. And I want to say right up front one thing. I mean, when you learn about Silicon Valley companies, they're much faster into the market than anybody else. Not because they're so much faster in doing what they do, but they don't wait so long. And it is becoming a very critical part also even of the methodology, because what we're doing is we're learning from customers far earlier, and customers has a much higher influence in the product design. And since also BlueCallom is a very innovative and disruptive model, I mean, we're disrupting the entire process of innovation itself. And so we want to learn together. And that's one of the biggest difference probably between Silicon Valley and the rest of the world. And so that's what we're doing today, helping you to get there. So quick recap, in the last 6 sessions, I mean, particularly in the very first 2, we talked about where all these ideas are coming from. And we also discussed that if we don't know how we will basically compose ideas, we will basically continue to bet on randomness and accidental ideas. But that's not what the brain does. It's far beyond random and definitely not accidental. So, but we need to understand how it works in order to basically get our arms around this innovation process. And if you're interested in the previous webinars, so go to BlueCallom.com webinar recordings, and you'll find them. So the hard and very difficult to believe reality is that there is no magic idea. There is no idea that comes all of a sudden, and there is no idea that somebody has while others don't. So the ideas are composed in a very natural chemical process in our mind. There is no serendipity. And for many people, this is sort of completely demystifying this magical thing about idea creation. But we have to realize it is not magical, and it is not random, and it is no serendipity. So every new idea ever created was composed from previous impressions and experiences. And I read the sentence because it's every word was crafted over the years, or over the probably 2 years now. And that is a fact of life. So they are composed from previous impressions and experiences. And if you look at these capsules, these neuron or neural cells, organelles. I learned even a little bit of neuroscience speech, but I don't want to make you a neuroscientist. This is full of chemicals. And these cells, they store and they process information. They don't see, they actually see through the eyes, and there are signals that get to them. They cannot come up with, oh, let's do that. This is technically, physically, universally impossible. And I like the word impossible and think, maybe there's a possibility, but that is like physics or chemical in this case. And so the beginning of BlueCallom Neuro Ideation started here, understanding that there is no randomness. Now, obviously the question is, if it's not, can we influence it? Can we stimulate it? How do we do that? We have 86 billion neurons in our body. So which one do we do or do we use? So wrong thinking. I mean, what we can do is like what we always do when we see highly complex situations. We look at the behavior and then we try to mimic the behavior and then we try to emulate it and then we try to stimulate it. And that's basically the process. And the outcome is rethinking innovation. No randomness, no serendipity. It is a process. We can understand it, we can learn it, we can stimulate it, emulate it, and actually work with it. So with that demystification of disruptive innovation, we realize for ourselves, we're actually in the same situation like Pythagoras was when he formulated very scientifically, Earth is not a disk, but a sphere. And we all can imagine how this worked back then. And when we talk to people, particularly to very creative people, that there is no creativity as such as we actually use the word creativity, it's all composed from past experiences. It's like telling them, no, Earth is no disk, it's actually a sphere. But when you look at our today's successful entrepreneurs, all of them basically followed a natural ideation process without even knowing. And the whole reason why we did what we did was I got so often asked, how to come up with these ideas? And I said, always, I don't know. I mean, it's popping up, it's there, and it's wonderful. And it was, even for me, I mean, like for everybody else, it was actually a random process and it was accidental. I thought, well, I mean, why do people have this and other people don't? Is this DNA? Is this just a different brain? What is it? And so I did one thing, what our mind does, also part of the process, it looks for analogies. How is it with musicians? I mean, we have far more musicians than entrepreneurs. And they produce, I mean, regularly new pieces of music. Like, can you imagine? I mean, humanity is, I don't know how old we are until before we started the first pieces of music. I mean, thousands of years ago, and we still produce even today more than ever before. Artists, look at chefs. I mean, they cook up stuff where we think, wow, this is very cool. Why couldn't we have this before? And so there are reasons why not, and there are reasons why so many can do so much. So there's a very good proof of the behavior of our mind, and we see it with sports people, and we used this example before. So highly successful entrepreneurs are risk takers. And now here comes one thing, and this is a reason why these risk takers, because they risk their money, they risk their free time, they risk sometimes even their family for their magical idea. And the most of people don't do that. They're no risk takers. Funny enough, the risk taking is associated with entrepreneurship, like, liquid with water. Yeah, water is liquid, unless it's steam or something else. But there are two different concepts. So what we learn from that is that with neuroscience and with our neuro ideation model and the whole deep innovation design process, we can actually helping non-risk takers to innovate. And the result is, the only difference is, but this is a very profound difference and very interesting difference, we can help basically people, non-risk takers, smart, creative guys, to work in a innovation center in a company. And so we can help companies to become finally more innovative. And I spoke with about 50 innovation managers in the last couple of months. And it's funny, originally we said, yeah, we got to be more innovative. That's sort of the mantra. But everybody confirmed, yeah, that's what our CEO says. We have to be more innovative. And some say, and there was a very large customer of ours says, and we need to help them be more entrepreneurial, because they think that the entrepreneurial thinking and the innovative thinking is actually connected. But when we look deeper into the functions of ideation and idea processing, it's not. So they don't need to be more entrepreneurial in order to be innovative, but they need an environment where they can be innovative, that they don't risk their, their personal wealth and everything else. So out of this came something very interesting. We started with a term innovation journey map, which we still use today, and you see it here. But what you can see, I believe you see my mouse, here is the ideation part. And typically, we believe that all these big ideas start with having a big idea. And in order to stimulate that, there's design thinking models and so on, we get a little bit of inputs from the customer side, or we look what's going on, or we solve a known problem. But when we understand how ideas get created, there's actually much more. So we're going back in needs and dreams that we discover. A dream team assembly, very critical. Most people don't know how to do that. And as a result, we believe we need experts in a dream team. Well, we found out, no, this is actually counterproductive. If you have all engineers or all chemists or physicists or medical doctors, you have only more of the same. But a diverse innovation team makes a radical difference. We didn't know because we didn't know where the ideas are coming from. Then an innovation strategy was something that we could never build unless we have the idea. And so we built the strategy right around where we actually developed today disruptive moments and idea validation and so on. No, we need to get to the very front. And in order to develop a strategy, we realized, okay, we need to have these inputs. And that is what we call innovation opportunity discovery. And that is one of the critical moments where we drive the experience that will lead, at the end of the day, to an idea. So as you can see, this entire chain before the idea, how actually our mind does that, our neurons connect things, is quite a process already. Now, if we know this path and we create ideas and we develop a disruptive business model out of the idea, then we go straight to idea validation, meaning we go back to the people that we ask here, try to find out what is actually an opportunity, try to see what are the needs and the dreams of our customers, because most people don't know. I would say 99.99% don't, because with our surveys, we get not to their dreams. Because also getting to the dreams is a neuroscientific process that we have to understand when we go there. But the beauty of this process become idea validation, no dollar spent at this time. We didn't build a prototype. We didn't do random pivoting. We didn't do experimentation, none of this. We were actually thinking with our machine up there, brain, opportunity, possible strategy, take a good team, make an assessment, what are the needs and the dreams, where are they going, what they want. Then we built this in our mind, but this might be actually different from what the customers tell you. And this is why people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and so on came up with a product that was surprising to the market, but not because they did not listen to the customers. They did observe very well things. When we built our previous company, Blue Roads, which was a channel management software company, the platform we actually built this on, we understood what the problems were, but nobody could articulate it. I always said, if I would do or would have done what they tell me, it would be a total different solution. The composition through a dream team and all these information actually built this very different, very disruptive technology. So after the idea is validated, we go to innovation, stage innovation, piece by piece. Then we build it. Then we build it, and then we get into the market. And you see from the intensity, this is a big one, and this is a big one. I mean, most ideation process stop somewhere right around here. But only if we get it to market, we're successful. And then we have to scale it. And then we have to do something that nobody does yet. Innovation continuum. Before the product reached mainstream, we need to actually go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what's next? And this is probably 5 to 6 years into it. And there's some companies who have an understanding of they have to re-innovate. Some do it better than others, but at least today, nobody does it in the full scope because nobody did understand how our mind actually composes ideas and composes business models. So allow me to go through this in a little bit more detail. So if you see here in the picture, so this is all gray. So we're on ground zero. We're looking for innovation opportunities. We have to discover them. And the way we discover is we actually go into the market and try to understand what the market is actually doing and where are the biggest risks that may actually hit us as a company sooner or later. And interestingly enough, most people know, but also most people are structured today differently. Most organizations fear that the innovation comes from anywhere. We don't know. It can pop up from a little startup or from our biggest competitor. And theoretically, this is true. But because of the fear, and fear is something that drives our behavior more than anything else, because of that fear, we look for what the competition does. And if you look into the automobile industry, you look into the pharmaceutical industry, you look into any industry on earth, how they started back 100, 150 years ago and what they're doing today. The automobile industry, you know, we had the Mercedes, we had the Volkswagen, we had the Porsche, we had, you know, all the other cars. We had sooner or later Ford built the cars differently with this invention of the conveyor belt. We had General Motors, we had even other companies in other countries, Fiat and so on. Back then, all the cars were fundamentally different because everybody had their own idea until they finally started to compete so heavily that everybody copied everybody else. So if you buy a car today, the only decision that you are making is actually the belief system brand. I want a Mercedes. No, Mercedes, I will never drive a Mercedes. I want to have an Audi. Audi, I don't like so much. I take a BMW. Would you remove the logos, you know, the brands? You would all sit in a car with comfortable leather seats, with automatic gear, with enormous acceleration, as long as you have still the combustion engine, with even more acceleration if you have an electric motor. You have all a pretty interesting dashboard, still the needles going up and down. You have LED lights, you have air condition, you have you know, 6-channel, whatever, super radio and sound. Theoretically, they're all the same, but you prefer this one brand over the other brand. And you see it even on the driving style. You know, the one drivers are a little more this, and I don't even want to make any suggestions. The other drivers are even more that. But the product has assimilated each other so much that there is no innovative car these days, except one. And so unless we think outside the box or inside the box, because the impressions and the experiences are already there, we're basically get more and more and more equal. And so discovering the opportunity is not copying the competition. That is the worst thing you can ever do. Ignore the competition completely. I mean, for us, my previous companies, I mean, starting with Computer 2000, we ignored the competition completely. So people said, yeah, come on, you will not completely ignore it. Yes, completely. I mean, I really mean completely. I did not care and do not care today at all about the competition. But what I do care, and I always did care, what do my customers want? That would be the needs, and we talked about this very, very quickly, and what they're dreaming about. But when we observe this market, not through a survey that some institute does and we get some charts and graphics back, but we do it ourselves. So if the CEO of a big automobile company cannot spend the time in the market with their customers, which every mid and small company does, then they decide with that, basically, no, I run this big ship. I don't have a time for that. So I run this as always. But that means no innovation. And if you look at even the most innovative tech companies in Silicon Valley, Intel, Cisco, I mean, you name it, all have improved their product. None have actually brought up new innovative solutions in the last 10, 20, 30 years. Not groundbreaking innovation, but always improvement. And we very much differentiate one of the other. So once we have understood what the opportunity is, then we can develop a strategy. And before that, we cannot. This is why we typically don't have an innovation strategy other than we need to do innovation. But there is no strategy on a particular innovation going forward because the need is not even understood. And I jump over this a little bit quickly, and we go to Dream Team Assembly. And Dream Team Assembly means a very diverse team. And you can actually now officially look for dreamers, because that's what a dream team also is. You dream up the next solution, which is more a dream than anything else, and compose it from a variety of backgrounds: marketing, sales, finance, subject matter experts, of course, such as engineers or physicists or chemists or medical doctors or, whatever you want to innovate. One reason why startups have this enormous success power over any kind of established company is because in the early days in a startup, like in ours, we have all kinds of sessions right now to build BlueCallom as the best product in the world. And this is everybody. This is marketing, this is sales, this is logistics, this is even our office manager who has administrative work and does this very well. But no, creativity is all over the place, and we know that, so we take everybody in. A whole enterprise with 250,000 employees cannot do that. But what they can do is build a dream team internally that is composed of all these different qualities. And if we realize and know that an engineer thinks very differently than a salesperson, who in turn thinks very differently like a marketing person, and they all three think differently like a finance person, we know they're different characters in our world. And if we know that, wouldn't it be logically that we take them all into an innovation team? Very much like naturally done by any startup. And we did that, and we do that now in enterprise as well. And the results are basically instantaneously visible. I mean, it isn't that over time, it becomes more successful. No, you feel it right away. So then what I said earlier, we go to the needs and dreams discovery. Once we have, and you see this here on this map, so we understood what we need to do. We built a little bit of strategy. We have a dream team. Now we assess the specific market within the entire market that we choose in the opportunity discovery, and look what are the needs and the dreams. Now, if we understand and believe that ideation comes from past experiences, then we are very obviously needing customers as part of the ideation process, because they are the experience owner. And because they do their job every day and found their own, workarounds, they're probably the worst in actually finding a solution. And since they're all of the same, and this comes back to no diversity, those people who do a certain job every day and it's not perfect, then they can discuss that it's not perfect, but they may not be able to find a solution. Even if they would find a solution, as long as they're not sort of authorized to think, then it will not happen. But they need to be part of this innovation team. And if we look again into startups and compare this with enterprises and mid-market companies, there is no other way to find out what would we actually do when we want to do it right than talking to the potential customers. That's a startup 101. Now, in the enterprise world, this is marketing job. But if marketing job is not tasked to do innovation, which typically is not, then what gives? So find the dreams, because if the dreams of the customer are understood, and a dream is something that is nearly impossible, which we would totally disregard today because we are working in a professional world where we only look for logical efficiency, effectiveness, and dreams, never, never, ever. And things that are impossible, if we know that's impossible, then why even start thinking a second about it? But disruptive innovation is typically, in the beginning, something that seems to be impossible. And this is why nobody cares about Tesla for the first 5 years, about Salesforce.com for the first 5 years, about Computer 2000, my company, for the first 5 years. They said, the stuff that they are doing with their business model revolution, and this was actually in the 80s, nobody cared because this was so odd that we will see if it works. And people saw it work. But then it was too late. And the company was, as Cleo already indicated, grew to $5 billion in revenue. Today, that very company actually makes 37 billion. It's the second largest tech distributor in the world. Actually, this is the largest. The other one is because of other sales. But nobody could come up with a competing idea because it was difficult and we were far too big. So you cannot wait for the dreams later on if you don't build the dreams right now. When we got the dreams, we get into neuro ideation, because this is the point in time when we got everything around what should be coming up. And then we actually ideate our concept. And also here, today, we do a lot of things counterintuitively bad. So for instance, we start with brainstorming, typical process. We did this too. And we realized that out of the brainstorming, usually nothing disruptive comes out. And not only usually, I think there's never ever a case known where a disruptive company was built by brainstorming. But there's even more negativity around brainstorming. When you have a brainstorm meeting, you have, and I'm sure you all experience that. So you have this meeting, goes about an hour or 2 hours until you're completely exhausted. And the brain is shutting down because it has this mechanism of energies conservancy. And then you pick some of the best ideas and you run with it. Next day or 2 days later or 3 days later, a couple of people come and say, hey, I thought about it a little bit more. I have a completely different idea. And the typical response, very obviously, is, oh, come on. I mean, we worked hard and we picked the idea. We're already working on it already now for 3 days. And now you come up with something different. You know what? Keep it. I mean, it's probably something really, really valuable, in parentheses, let me go. And we'll take care of it later. Today we know, because the way ideas get composed and how the wiring is in our brain and how over time it goes more and more deep, we basically kicked out some of the better ideas and kept the most obvious ideas, the ones that are come in this 1 hour or 2 hour brainstorming meeting, or sometimes even half an hour. But what the brain does, it brings up the obvious ideas very quickly. And this is the nature of our mind, of our brain. It does that because this need to be out there, period. If we do the post-brainstorm idea collection, very different. Now, if we do what I shared with you, like, okay, is this process what we're doing, demystifying ideation, Earth is no disk anymore? It's the analogy of something. And this is what the brain continuously seeks, analogous ideas. But they don't come in the beginning, because for the last 5 million years, the brain was actually built for us to react very fast because we need survival. It was built for survival. It wasn't built for doing something new. However, we realized it did that even 12,000 years ago. So it has evolved to something that we didn't really understand. So if we look again into the behavior of this machine, it indicates to us, hey, there is more in life. I am built to do all these things. And if we go a step further, we call this the column burst. We open up completely after maybe a week or 2 or 3 working on an idea, open up in a way that we say no blockage anymore. The sky is the limit. I mean, you've heard this sentence multiple times, but you do this in a sequence now, and you get to what we call the BlueCallom summit. That is when you reach the peak where everything and everybody thought about pretty much everything. And every idea from somebody in this team adds to your idea composition a new experience. So if I tell you something new, then you think about it, and I will say, oh, this idiot, no, I'm not interested. Or, interesting. What is it telling me? And then you ask your machine up there, basically, what does it tell me? And the machine comes back and says, remember these other experiences? If you do this and this, it could actually end up with that. Yeah, interesting. So if we do this in a team of diverse background, and now you realize if it's all the same, then the wiring is the same. If it's diverse, you really get massive additional experiences. And this is when we end up in this Neuro Ideation method, understanding exactly how the machine works, how we get to truly disruptive ideas. Now, something else wonderful happens with that. Let's assume your strongest competitor hears from this tool and says, wow, we do that too. Well, is it now again all equal? No, because we're so unique as humans. There is not a single person ever, and not in the future and not in the past, of our today's 7.8 billion people who has the exact same experience than you have. Impossible. Technically, physical impossible. You stand here, they stand there, they look at the same object, but from a different angle. I mean, right here is a difference. And since this is not happening always, even if you are physically connected to each other, the difference in experience is still existing. Now, the wonderful outcome is that two competitors would actually come to very different solutions, maybe similar, but most likely even not similar, but different. And we go back actually to where the Porsche and the Mercedes are fundamentally different cars. I mean, it's still today, but not as different as it was. And so we get to a status of innovation that eliminates the need for looking at our competitors and replace that with a desire and with a hope actually to do what our customers probably really want. And before we spend any dollar, we will now validate the idea. We go back to this very same market or even to different people and want to share what we got, things that they probably have never come up with and could never come up with. And we construct basically a minimum viable product. We don't even build it. We don't waste still no dollar for anything. Say, okay, this is what it could look like. Now you can say, well, not everybody is creative and can imagine. Well, then this is not your right customer, because you will want to have early adopters, the smartest, the best of the best, also on your customer side, because you will not win with a groundbreaking innovation in a conservative business. No way. That's the other major mistake what every conceivable enterprise does. You go back, exciting idea. Now you go back to your biggest customer, typically the most conservative. They say, I don't know, probably not. Oh. And so when you look into these prototypes of cars or new medicine or new computers or no anything, people say, no. You missed the point that you need to talk to these most advanced customers. They are driving a trend and an industry segment, and they did this even 100 or 500 years ago. We just need to realize also there, the thinking is different, and this made them super successful, and these drivers also super demanding. But this is the group of customers you start with your new product, and this is where you validate it. Now, if you have a method where you came up with the idea, you have a way to build a construct of a prototype, you have a method of finding out what the market actually even wanted, and now you have a method for validating this idea, maybe with 100 customers who say, I would buy this in a heartbeat. Then you can go back to your financing guys and say, hey, this is what we need. We need $100 million. And I had one interview with actually a large company, and the innovation manager said, and we talked about 50 million. He said, well, no way. I mean, we have a very tiny budget, and there is absolutely no way to get even beyond the 10 million range. I mean, it's not possible. I said, so why do you innovate? Yeah, we need this, innovation. We need to be, a major step forward. If there's a startup coming with a whole new ... thingy, so whatever you innovate for, they may push us at the wall like the Ubers and the Airbnbs and these guys. I said, yeah, okay. Did you know that Uber actually raised $1 billion and were not even profitable? And this was way before the IPO. And this was actually the time when we all understood, hey, Uber is something. I said, $1 billion? And I said, yeah. And if you look at Tesla, I think it was 12 billion or something like that. These things cost money. I mean, they don't just grow out of a $50,000 or $100,000 startup. That's what they grow out from initially. But there is no known company in the past 25 years who have not risen at least 50 million in funding before they did an IPO. And so we don't have a lot of IPO candidates right now in the rest of the world, but it need to come somewhere in order to compete in a market and bring it to market, not just building a prototype. That is peanuts, but that is not what it takes to make it successful. And so it is something where you need to find out who is your actual real financing guy. And if there is no budget at all and not even planned, then you probably, look for a different company where you can innovate if you're an innovation manager and want to innovate, because it cannot be successful. And after a couple of years, and people say, okay, so what did you bring to market? Well, we had a lot of good ideas. Unfortunately, management didn't decide to go forward, but it was amazing. No way to get this job. I mean, if you couldn't bring anything successfully to market, why should you, try here? So once you got the finance, then you built, and this is then, kind of an interesting journey, because on the building, and you see this here in our curve, this is the curve for building something, and this is the curve to become when we go to market. And you build something and it gets less and less here and already overshadowed by our go-to-market strategy. And this is what we call a market-born product. I mean, if you look at BlueCallom right now, we're starting our beta test in 2-3 weeks. I mean, we are far from ready, but we're looking for these early adapters, these most creative and already innovative companies who say we want to take it to the next level, even beyond what we ever did. And we built the rest of the product based on all the little experiences that happened while we go with some of the selected customers into the market. We get more feedback into the product, and we need to less re-architect it. Basically, intellectually speaking, we don't need to retrain our product to finally fit the market, because we make the product market fit in the market already. And this is something in Europe where people say, no. I mean, my customers would never accept that. Well, I don't think so. because people want to shape also this product to their liking, and they can, but only if you let them and if this is early enough. So when you look for your product building process, understand that the minimum viable product, the MVP, is a very fine-tuned name. Minimum, absolute minimum, viable. Yeah, I mean, it should work, of course, and it's a product and not just a paper. So, and this is not a beauty contest. You get into the market to prove a disruptive solution. And the only feature that need to work in this product is actually the disruptive moment of that product. So, and obviously, I've seen it over and over, even in larger companies, people realized after years of experimentation, that's already available in another country. Was a little startup, is pretty much a big company today. Start Googling and use the automatic version of your Google translation so it can translate everything. Look into Korea, look into Vietnam. I mean, for many people in the West, Vietnam is still this country destroyed more or less after the Vietnam War, but that was 50 years ago. So look at Vietnam. It's an amazingly growing country. Look into Indonesia. I mean, Indonesia is long gone the old bamboo world. I mean, it's a highly industrialized nation. And, we spoke with one of the startups that we had in the accelerator. We discussed sort of where they go next. And they talked about all the Asian countries. And I said, Europe not on your map? And he said, no, we're 4.5 billion people here in Asia. And the market is wide open. And there's all these limitations and restrictions and regulations and so on. For us, this is just way too expensive. So we're going for this 4.5 billion market first, and then we may see if the other 500 million in Europe and the 300 million US, if that is even interesting to us. I thought, wow, yeah, I mean, this is a reality that we are facing. And so look at what these countries are doing when you try to innovate for the world, and then make your initial user experience around this really a pleasant one. It doesn't need to be the super show, but it need to be working, and people must have fun with it too. And then ensure that the functionality is truly minimal. I mean, that thing that drives your core value as a company, that need to work. Everything else is gravy. And then you go to market. And in the beginning, very rudimentary, like our young man here with all the package on his bicycle. This is how startups go to market, with a bicycle, and they go direct. And this is probably the CEO who's getting there. Which means if your innovation team has this structure, then you need to go to market as quickly as humanly possible. And totally forget about anybody could copy your holy idea. No way. Nobody will. Nobody who has sort of the power will do that, because they have the power, but they don't have the time, and they don't have the experiences. And then again, if we know how it works up there, we know that the experiences that we had that led to the solution can only be copied. And if it's getting copied, congratulations. If you have 3 people who copy it, even better. If you have 10 other companies copy your idea, then you made it. But because you cannot become a market leader without having followers. So copying is a good idea. And people think of open source as something stupid because everybody can copy it. Yeah, but there's a few open source companies who have built billion-dollar organizations because all the leaders have some followers, and very quickly. So in the final stage is actually 2 stages on our map, is the scaling and the continuum. So you will need to scale quickly, and then okay, you got it. And if you're not in the market and you haven't scaled, your value of the innovation is basically 0. And you have spent lots and lots of money for nothing. And that is actually status quo in the industry around the world today. No innovation out of enterprises because none have sold anything. So we go back to our innovation journey map, then I think I can say neuro ideation made a huge difference in the entire innovation process. And this was the reason why we even built this system. You know, I had no intention to start yet another software company, but there was nothing on the market even close that we could have massaged and changed. There was one actually smaller company we talked to, but they were not willing to basically rip their entire product apart just for our stupid idea. And so we built it ourselves. We built a technology and the code name was BlueCallom. And out of this became actually a company, BlueCallom. That's what we are today. And just to give you a very quick insight what it looks like, because also this is kind of new and not just kind of. So we're the first with a multi-user networked canvas architecture. So most of you probably have played with canvases, business model canvas, even ideation canvas and innovation canvas and so on. And the same mechanism from the original canvas idea, there's a left sphere and a right sphere. Here is basically our discoveries and what have you and what are other people's needs. This is sort of the discovery of the results and or the dreams and the ecosystems or whatever we have. And then in the middle, we explore the summary. And then on the bottom line, there's the action part. So it isn't a classic user interface as you used it with forms and typing things in or lists and spreadsheets and so forth. But you will most likely experience a little bit odd. I mean, it starts 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8. How confusing is this? No, this is stupid. For us, one of the key experiences was when people, you know, got over that point and it came back and said, you know what, this is so cool. I realized that everything I'm reviewing is on the left-hand side. Everything we're doing is on the right-hand side. Everything we're negotiating between the two is in the middle. Funny enough, left brain, right brain, and in the middle is a thing called corpus callosum, and actually gave our company the name, BlueCallom, the colossum. And this is how the brain works. It doesn't work linear, never did. It works lateral, back and forth. The only reason why we're so linear is because we get trained in kindergarten until we are in the job and do things step by step. There is a training of our brain to do it in this way, because about 800 years ago, when our brain was far not as developed as it is today, this was the only way that people could comprehend. They do this, and then we do this. Okay, so is it this first and then this? Okay, and then there's a third step. Oh God, okay, this, and this. We're far beyond this. We understand that lateral thinking gives us way more reach than linear thinking. And so this is something that you may want to get used to. And we have not only one, we actually have a whole series. But if you're seeing all this little text here, there's the bigger view. So every element has a big view and you can, write and read and do your normal thing here. In our current case, which is our internal project, which is, as you can see, I mean, it's totally secret, of course, UX innovation, innovative user guidance. So we want to innovate user experience for ourselves. And this is basically our test project. It consists of 12 steps or 12 episodes, as we call it. And it starts with what we just went through: innovation opportunity discovery, innovation strategy. Then we assembled our dream team. The next step, which we start next week, is the needs and dreams analysis, and it goes further and further. We have a dashboard where we see, okay, right now there are 3 projects simultaneously. Our initial customers where we worked with were large enterprises, and so they have 20, 30, 50 innovation projects, sometimes hundreds simultaneously. So we thought, okay, we need to accommodate that too. We have a nice dashboard. It's not quite ready. This is one of these things of an early product. There's only one thing I want to point to, which is this one part of the feature of our ideation process, talent composition. So we show with this ring immediately with one, you don't even have to read anything. You see, okay, this is very colorful, meaning there are green partners, experts, the red ones are the customers, the highly yellow one are some finance people, managers, clients, marketeers, and production people. It was very important for us that you don't even have to understand what's going on theoretically. We visualize things that are of utmost importance, and this is one of the things. And this will go on in the future as we progress. And like I said in the beginning, we realized we need to provide training, not so much the product training, because it's a canvas and it's pretty easy, but the methodology training. And so we start in January with BlueCallom Essentials, where we go for a whole week through basically what I told you in an hour in great detail. So every step that is done, and also learning with that canvas to not go step by step by step, but actually back and forth. Let your brain negotiate what it likes and what it doesn't like, and the learning will be much faster and much more intense than if you have to learn this, this, and this, and then, oh God, did I forget? No, the negotiation between right and left actually brings it deeper into your mind. And so, yeah, we consider ourselves obviously innovative in these things. And what I want to leave it with you as a consideration is, and this is now the only little advertising, join our beta. It's free and you can experiment with it. You can get the feel if you like it or not, starting end of this month, and or join the essential training that starts in January, I think 25. I have the numbers right there. And you'll get the software for 3 months for free. So we want you to experiment it while get the training, but also then thereafter. So at least your first innovation project is basically covered with a training. And if you need a 4th month, we would be the last to say no. So if we can help you explore this in any way or shape, would love to do that. I'm the CEO of the company, but like any startup, running around myself, like the guy with a little bike and the luggage on the back. So we're all grunt workers, and here again the 2 options. One is beta collaboration starts. Here we have the dates. November 24. You go to bluecallom.com/beta test and you register. And I have to say, please understand that we have to be selective. So for us, the best beta testers are the ones that have a project, are a company of a certain size, and have basically an innovation team that can really work with it. Not just, let me try it out. You will be able to try it out early next year when we have a trial version. Then you can play with it yourself. But the beta test is, we want to have, and this is why it's obviously for free, we want to have load on the system and real projects that go through where we can both jointly learn. The essential training starts January 25 next year, and also BlueCallom.com BCEU training, or give us a call, Switzerland or US number, email address, contact@bluecallom.com, and we're more than happy to chat and see, how we could help you and how you could help us. I mean, clearly we need help too. All right. So with that, from my side, a big thank you for staying, and I give it back to Cleo.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Axel, for the really informative webinar. And so before we conclude today, we're just going to hop straight into the Q&A session. So we received a couple of questions throughout the program. So we'll just go ahead and get started with those.
Sure.
Okay, so this question seems to be related to the slide when you were discussing the financing portion. And so you mentioned getting millions, if not billions, in financing. The question is, do you think that this increases the risk when dealing with the uncertainty of radical innovation?
That it increases the risk?
Yes,
Oh, the big financing?
I think it, yeah.
Okay, good question. So we have a term that's called staged financing model. It's a method where the financing isn't like, okay, you need 5 billion, so here you are. It's the very same process like any VC would do and any investor in a startup. So you only ask and you only get basically as much as you really need to grow and do this right in that very time frame of the next, let's say, 3 months or 6 or 9 months or 12 months and so forth. You will want to be sure that the money is available as sort of milestones are achieved, because that would be really sad if all of a sudden people say, oh, no, now we have Corona, we'll freeze everything. You know, it may happen, but it would be really, really bad. So when you have the valuation, the validation of the product, and you can show your entire process, how do you got to the product, that increases for somebody who does a due diligence on the innovation enormously the likelihood, or it increases the understanding of the likelihood of success. Today, it's all about randomness, and this sounds good, looks good. We never talk to customers because we don't want our idea get stolen. So we do this all in our lab, and we build a fence around it that nobody can even, look through whatever windows and so on. That risk is gigantic, and I think the industry, the combined industry risk today, maybe in the hundreds of billions around the world from the last 10 years, which all did nothing but slight improvements, but you wouldn't need, an innovation center to do that. Improvements have been done before. So we decrease the risk, by order of magnitude with that process. Yeah.
Yep, that definitely makes sense with the staged approach. So our next question is this method more of a creativity development approach, or are you building a process management tool?
It's an interesting one. If we separate creativity as sort of the random artistry and take this, like we said, it's no serendipity, and it's actually a process like moving our arms and walking around and taking meetings and speaking with customers, then yes, it is a process system. It's not a creativity stimulation machine. Even so, it does that, but it does that in a methodical way, and methods mean also process. So it is an innovation management system, which is actually a procedurized model. And the difference, or the parallel to is Earth a disk or a sphere, is probably for many people is innovation as a creative sort of, special process, which is between magic and divine. Is this now just a regular process? Can never work. That was the typical response we got. And that is the challenge we have as an organization, to bring this demystification into the market. It's not that we want to kill creativity. It's actually the other way around. We want to amplify creativity, but also we want to make understanding that creativity isn't this magic mystical thing. It's actually something that we begin to understand. Like Earth is not a magical disk that flies around, a funny universe where sun is the center of the universe. We're a sphere circumventing sun in our galaxy and many galaxies around. We have this understanding today. And because of that, we have a very different picture of what our universe actually is today. And the same is with innovation being no serendipity.
Okay, great. So our next question, you said to ignore the competition totally. So do you have a deadline for this? For example, like in the early stage, or do we keep doing this for the whole business?
You can keep this for the whole business. I mean, and I can tell you basically from my own experience. So when we started Computer 2000, it was this radical, totally stupid, never possible to work concept. So we got it done. We never, even until, in the billions of dollars range, looked at competition. What are they doing? Is there something we need to learn? Is there something we need to watch? We completely ignored that because it's a total waste of time. If we take the same time that we use to analyze the competition, now to analyze what the customers want and what they're dreaming about, and I'm always using this dreaming about because this is what they want to go to. And if we understand that, I don't care what the competition does. I mean, it's a waste because there is nothing we can learn. We can only learn from the competition, theoretically, mistakes they did. Yeah, but even that is not really an important learning because customers, if we have a good customer relationship, then we will learn from the customer what we need to do rather than don't do or what others did. So there is no end to it. And as I said, started with 0 revenue day one until 5 billion on IPO and merger. I never cared. And also with the company, with our first software company, this was, again, it was also an enterprise play, similar to what we do today. I never cared about the competition because, every second I would care, I would take away from, learning from the customers. And so it's of no interest to me. I mean, and it's just not just me. I mean, I have to say, if you talk to pretty much any of innovative entrepreneurs or business leaders, they don't care. I mean, they enjoy what's going on in the competition. I mean, people tell us anyway, hey, did you see that this company did this? Hey, isn't that cool? Because it's totally stupid than what we do. Okay, it's like, okay, what is the current stage of the election? Whatever it is, I mean, it's predictable that this was not a clear cut. It's predictable that there will be a negotiation back and forward. It's predictable that it will be possibly a hard, this accuses that, and these guys. I mean, this is a predictable thing. So why should I care? But I can only say this is predictable when I understand what is actually going on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like the financing was a very popular topic. So we have another question.
Okay.
And so it is basically to elaborate a bit more on raising funds from the CFO.
Okay.
The millions to billions. So maybe if we can just dive deeper into targeting the CFO, how that might work, how to set up your case to get this type of financing, and just elaborating a bit more on that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question and an interesting situation. We had in the US, we had a meetup recently. No, this is actually, it's coming. So maybe you join this in November. There is a whole meetup. It's also digital about financing. We had one before in Asia, and it was the biggest crowd sort of we ever got into a webinar, and we realized, okay, that's a hot topic. And so financing, I can don't have the slide handy here, but I have one of the opening slides in this financing session was there are two very different types of investors. One is the VCs or the long-term private equity investors and so on. They see an innovation as a gateway to a future that they understand. And once they understand, they're willing to invest pretty much any amount because they see this will change the world. A CFO, on the other side, is a very differently trained and also experienced person. They're looking for cost savings, they're looking for cash flow, and they're looking for profitability. So in none of these three core features, obviously all the control systems, and there's much more, but these are sort of what it boils down to. In none of this is the future. It's actually the present learned from the past. And so if a CFO is the only and historically very successful, driver of finance, likelihood to get funded is limited, and therefore the go-to point for an innovation lab or innovators team is actually the CEO telling them what you need on the finance side. And the first thing you need is somebody who is basically an investor versus a profit and loss balance sheet, forward-looking reports, and so forth, CFO. Because coming back to our experiences, if the experience of a CFO for the last, let's say, 10 years was, and he is the CFO because he was brilliant in controlling and mechanism that's called sort of financials, and is brilliant in balancing cash flow and profitability and cost and all this kind of stuff, then he's probably not brilliant in something totally new called, innovation financing. So it's better to hire somebody, and this guy can be under the CFO if this is the desire of the CEO and the board. But it need to be an expert, and it need to be understood that financing innovation is not peanuts. I mean, that's a very clear statement. And it may be shocking to many larger companies, even though they're sitting on theoretically billions, but they're sitting on a lot of cash or have a good cash flow because the other thing was done so very well. So why risk that for something else? But if the task is we need to be more innovative, well, then, something else need to happen also on the financial side. And this is why I also recommend in every innovation team, have a finance guy there just right away. And this finance guy wouldn't sit and say, okay, I wait until in a year or two we talk to the CFO. No, they drive the whole process also from the financial point of view from day one. And if we go deeper into this function, it's a full-time job actually, because there's any time is money to be spent and money to be saved, and potentially money to be built or created for the innovation process. And that is a process that isn't like, oh, we'll get a couple billion here, never ever. So there is a lot of work to do that. And if they start from the beginning, that would be probably the right thing. And with that, even if you, and this is the positive thing about the model is, which I was very keen on, excuse me, building it that way. Finance is here. This is right before we actually go to market. The heavy lifting theoretically is all that. And if you have a team, and this is committed from the boss that, okay, you need 5 or 6 people. Okay, here you have it, because we need to be more innovative. Then you work on this, and the CFO, and this is probably the best answer for right now, let the CFO and the CEO know from every step here. Ask them, ask them, okay, once we have the innovation strategy, would you give us 10 minutes or 3 minutes, 5 minutes? And you will present your strategy in 5 minutes. I mean, literally 5, no minute more. It's not easy. You need to learn this, but you can. Every startup today, pretty much every startup around the world, gets a 3-minute pitch to share in 3 minutes the entire company, including the strategy, the market, the product, the advantages, the disadvantages, the customers, and everything else. So if you get 5 minutes from your CEO, then he would say, well, you cannot present this in 5 minutes. You will. And if you present your strategy in 5 minutes and say, okay, this is it for now. Okay, super. Yeah, go for it. Then you have your dream team assembled. You go back, 5-minute presentation. Why, who you have, what they do, what they will do, what they don't do, and so forth. You get the needs and dreams analysis, 5 minutes. What are the needs of the customers and what are the dreams? And 5 minutes can be a long time. Then you go to neuro ideation and the results, 5 minutes. What you do is actually experience transformation. That may be a no term, But if you transfer or transfer over the experience that you have through that process, you end up with an executive team that actually joined you in this transformation, in this experience transportation journey. And they will not say, come on, this is impossible. They will probably, if you do a good job with presentation, hence marketing people, not only the engineers, not only the finance people. The presentation is key to your success. If you cannot transport your message to the executive team, you will not win. I mean, there is no way. And so you come to a point where they can't wait to invest. I mean, I'm a little bit exaggerating this. It's still a battle, no question, but it will be a very different battle. It will be an intelligent battle versus an emotional. Like, oh, this is too much money, no matter what you do. This cannot happen. If this happens, then you have lost already, no matter what you do. But if it's a discussion like, okay, I understand the strategy, I understand where you come from, I understand what the market wants, I understand why you got this idea and what the disruptive moment is, and the validation of the idea from 50 customers of, the finest of the finest. Yeah, I understand that you need now about 1 million, and the 1 million is okay. But I also understand that it may take, if you actually go through the market process and you get this to $100 million company, that you need another 10 or 20 or 50 million to get there. And I understand that if this one is becoming a $1 billion business, that you probably need $1 billion to invest in before we get something out of it. But that is a process that is very well done by every decent, innovative startup, but it's never used in an enterprise so far. Sorry for the long answer.
No, that was a great answer. And thank you so much again for the webinar. So that is all of the questions for today. Thank you so much to everybody who asked questions as well. And so with that, we are going to wrap up the webinar and just thank everybody again for joining us this morning. We invite you to join our beta registration with the link that Axel previously shared, BlueCallom.com/beta test, and to connect with us on social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And so on behalf of the team at BlueCallom, thanks again for attending, and we hope that you all enjoy your day.
All right, thank you very much, Cleo. Thanks everybody, and hopefully see you around. Thanks.